Hello, class. Today we're going to go over one of Abraham Lincoln's most famous speeches, the Gettysburg Address. I'm going to read the speech aloud, taking it section by section. In between sections, I'm going to give you some historical context, definitions, and commentaries to help you better understand and make sense of the speech. Let's begin. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Lincoln begins his speech, speaking on the founding of the United States. However, right off the bat, there is a confusing element. What does 407 years mean? In the past, many people used the word score to say 20 years. So 4 scores meant 4 times 20, which is 80. To put that understanding with the rest of the content, I would suggest that Lincoln is saying 87 years ago, our fathers, not fathers of Lincoln or the audiences present at Gettysburg, but the founding fathers of the United States, such as Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, etc., founded a new nation in America that was dedicated to liberty, freedom, and equality of all men. Now, we are engaged in the Great Civil War, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. So, having established before that this country was created on liberty, freedom, and equality for all men, Lincoln seems to say that those very dedications and ideals are being tested through this Civil War. Quick note: Civil War is a term used to define a war between groups of people in the same country, similar to the war that is currently going on in Syria. Lincoln seems to connect the still waging physical warfare between the Union and the Confederate with the ideal warfare that was taking place between the two groups. This conflict is testing the strength and limitation of the ideals set forth by the forefathers. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Lincoln clearly remarks on the purpose of that day, the commemoration of the Gettysburg Cemetery and the soldiers who died on that field. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. Although Lincoln and the audiences were there to commemorate, respect, and honor the fallen soldiers, Lincoln seems to suggest that the field as well as the soldiers have already done that. Quick note: consecrate and hallow is to dedicate, make sacred, or greatly honored. You can tell from the word that he used before he introduced the two other words. He used the word dedicate. Then he introduced the words consecrate and hallow. In other words, the soldiers who fought on Gettysburg have made the field as well as the battle sacred. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Instead of seeking to commemorate the field that was already done by the soldiers who fought and died there, Lincoln suggests that those who are living and those present at the commemoration should dedicate themselves to finish the work that the soldiers have already begun. What is that unfinished work? That great task? The last sentence seems to suggest that it is a task of creating a new freedom which considers all men, and I mean all men, equal and free, and the lasting maintenance of this nation.